Welcome to Darklaw Dominion, where we dive deep into the shadows, the darkest parts of ourselves that we rarely speak of, yet we all feel. I'm your host, Dominion, and in this series, we're not afraid to face the raw truths of our mental health, the battles that rage within, and the weight we carry when no one else is watching. This is where we confront the fears, the pain, the trauma we hide, and uncover the power that lies within the darkness. Because only by facing it can we truly heal and rise. Let's take this journey together. Welcome to the depths of Darklaw Dominion.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome back to the Creative Dominion podcast with their host, Dominion. I'm so excited to finally be back into the recording space. I know for those of you that have followed the Creative Dominion podcast, wrote the first novel, Darklaw, The Ashes of the Fallen Violet, dropped in September, Grimdark Fantasy Trilogy, book one of the Darklaw Dominion trilogy. And so really excited to bring a special guest here this evening for episode 15 of the Darklaw Dominion season 2. I have a Mr. Coach Rob out of Coconut Creek, Florida. So how are you doing, Coach?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me here on the Dominion podcast.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you again being a part of this wonderful journey through mental health and domestic violence. And today's episode, we're really going to hit on a lot of mental health topics and really encourage the audience to really tune in. And so, with that being said, I'll kick it over to you to kind of introduce yourself.
So I go by Coach Rob, like you said. Quick synopsis, because if we go into my bio, we'll be here for like 5 episodes. 10-year Navy veteran, went in from 97, got out in 2007. From there, became a police officer. So did that. So between federal and state law enforcement and military law enforcement, about 17 years experience. In 2018, my mom passed away, which was a huge shock. It kind of came out of the blue, didn't expect it. Was very frustrated in the climate of how law enforcement was and how it was going. Left that and opened a strength and conditioning gym where I ran that for 4 years. Unfortunately, losing that to COVID. And due to a little bit of childhood trauma, trauma from the military, trauma from being a cop, trauma from losing my business, divorce after 18 years, I really hit rock bottom more than once in my life, but that has become my greatest strength and my greatest comeback because I've been able to pick myself up every time I've gotten knocked down and really built some resilience. And as a man, veteran, or a police officer with PTSD, major depressive disorder, anxiety, and a bunch of other good stuff that my life has brought me, I realized I didn't want men, specifically men, to go through the same things that I did and wanted them to be able to heal and become the best versions of themselves. And that essentially is where my coaching came from through my 3 pillars: fitness, mindset, and discipline.
Awesome. Also, appreciate you introducing yourself. And first, want to also thank you for your service to both the military and the law enforcement force. And so, with that being said, again, as always, on the Creative Dominion podcast, we bring you the hard stuff. We always say leave your feelings at home. And, if you need any tissue or anything, just go ahead and grab it and hit pause. And so, with that being said, again, welcome to episode 15, and just really excited to dive into these topics with Coach Rob. And before I continue, as I always start with every episode, is I encourage you listening out there or viewing to really just take one thing that you can apply daily to your life from this episode. Everything's not going to resonate with you, but really find one thing that resonates with you from the stories and testimonies shared here today that you can apply daily. And then I also encourage you to reach one, teach one. And so share the knowledge and share the experience that you've encountered today with others. And that way we can blossom into a wonderful society. And so with that being said, we'll kind of start with this. Um, I know people, the coach word, we see coaches in sports, we see coaches, the gym. I know you said fitness, on a fitness gym for 4 years. We see that kind of like taboo word coach. And so with that being said, I wanted you to kind of go through your childhood and kind of mark the framework as you were going through life that led you to this path.
So, I mean, my childhood, I guess, for me, would be considered normal. Mother and father in my life, one younger brother. But I remember like my childhood was pretty happy for the most part. Did sports majority of growing up into high school, into college. So always been in athletics and around sports, sports performance and all that stuff. And had the support of my father where he coached me in soccer for heck, 6, 7 years, coached me in basketball a little bit, uh, taught me a little bit about working out and stuff like that. So he was there in his own way, but from the emotional standpoint of saying I love you or I'm proud of you, that was never there in my life. And it wasn't until recently, now that he's getting, older up in age, that he says I love you or I'm proud of you, or tends to show a little more interest in my life and who I am as a person. But beyond that, for that age group or that time when men was growing up, they really don't talk about mental health issues or problems. It was one of those things that you just keep your mouth shut and you do what you have to do to, support your family or go to work or raise your kids. And that's the kind of man he is. So there has been multiple points in his life where he used to yell at my mom, like not physically, but basically emotionally abuse my mom with yelling and screaming, not being able to control his emotions. And so when I grew up with that, seeing that, that was my normal, right? I thought that was okay. I thought that's how we behaved. So you take that and then you go into the military, and my PTSD isn't from combat. When I was in my first command, I was physically abused. Back when I went in the military, they didn't have women integrated with men on ships or anything. And so I always tell everybody it was like being in prison. At the time, I was the smallest guy, I was the newest guy. So that means that I was fair game for everybody on that ship to be berated, to be ridiculed, to be treated like crap. And you never think, about the military really being like this, but it was a very scary time to the point where I remember calling my dad at 21 from a payphone. So I'm gonna show my age, and, I'm crying, right? And I'm bawling. I'm like, "Dad, I can't do this. I wanna come home." The greatest thing in his own hard way, he said, "Son, I love you, but you can't come home." And he hung up the phone on me. And that was that real world, like, "Okay, I guess I have to figure this out on my own." My dad's not gonna hold my hand anymore. And that's when I started, I guess, delving into fitness and started working out and started trying to put on, like, I knew that I had to be the biggest guy in jail. I had to start fighting back. So I did that. And then beyond that in my military career, I had issues with just finding my way, so to speak, to where I only did 3 years in the military and I got out. September 11th happened. And I remember receiving this letter and it said, you can go back in the military or we're going to bring you back in the military. And knowing that I didn't wanna, like, be drug in and just be forced to do whatever. I went back in, and that's when I went back in as a military police officer, because I knew from everything that I've been through that I wanted to protect those that couldn't protect themselves, and that's where I really had this service mindset. But the problem was I was stacking trauma from being a kid with stuff I didn't deal with, stacking trauma from everything you go through with being in the military, then stacking trauma with everything you go through with being a cop, and then deciding to own a business right after my mom died, dealing with that, and then losing the business. I put a lot of depression and trauma in my life to the point where there's been multiple times where I thought I was going to commit suicide and thought this was going to be my last day on earth. And interesting enough, after the downfall of my first marriage of after 18 years, my current wife, we've been married almost 2 years now, but we've been together for 8 years. I knew I didn't want to take my behavior of the anger and being depressed and the emotional drain that I was on my family. I didn't want to take that into this new relationship. I love this woman to death. She's been an amazing support system for me. I always call her my emotional support wife versus my emotional support dog, because she's there. And so I knew something had to change. And for me, that was what's crazy. The simplest thing was practicing gratitude. I never did it. I didn't think it was a thing. I thought it was hokey and silly and dumb. I just started practicing gratitude and I started realizing, well, crap, my life's not as bad as I make it out to be. I'm not going to have that victim mentality. And I like to say, be a victor, not a victim. And that's when I started to like really dwell and go into personal development, gratitude. practicing different kinds of breath work, journaling, or really going deep into in the eternal battle of who Coach Rob and who myself is, to be able to get out of that darkness and that depression and those bad days. And then once I found the things that worked, I was like, man, I need to give this to other men and other people so they don't have to deal with what I had to deal with and they can become the best versions of themselves.
Awesome, awesome. I love everything that you broke down there. And I love that you broke down like growing up with your dad. He was there physically, but not emotionally. And I really think that's deep for a lot of men listening because for those of you that have followed the podcast, that's similar to my story with my dad. Really just as men in general, especially in that time, just not having those resources and not having that outlet outside of, yelling, screaming, cussing, or what have you. Sometimes, for me, it was more of like the domestic violence side of like physical, but, everybody goes through different, aspects of that. But I really love that you broke down just that emotional, not having that. And really appreciate you breaking that down. And one thing you said as you were going through your story, that one word you said, if you will, is that word gratitude. And I just really hope the audience was listening when you keyed in on that, because that's one word that really, really saves you
Definitely.
in today's society. Um, and then another word that I just was thinking about when you said gratitude is kind of like it goes hand in hand with it is the word grace. And so just, being in leadership in corporate America or, being a father, et cetera, one thing I've just learned recently, just in the past couple months, is just showing that gratitude slash grace towards others. Cause we've always seen those like cartoons where it's like you got that good side, bad side on each shoulder. And what I've realized just over the past couple months is that every situation or every circumstance throughout the day can like build the day, if that makes sense. Whether it's a argument at work, or maybe you feel short at the job on a goal, or maybe something happened and a coworker comes at you, hot or yelling at you, how you react and, that gratitude and that grace can determine the next situation and can determine the outlook on the day. And, I really just want the audience to really key in on that word gratitude that you said, is because a lot of times, we think we're having, the worst life in the world. But if you just turn on the news channel, just scroll through your phone, social media, Facebook, TikTok, whatever there's literally a million people out there having a way, way worse life than you. So I just really love that you broke down that word gratitude, and then kind of piggybacking off of that, I'd love for you to kind of break down how you started. I know you said in the military, like you started kind of the scrawniest, newest kid on the block to kind of grow into that military police officer. So I really want you to spend time breaking that down because I really think that'll be impactful for the audience to kind of see that, hey, maybe you're listening right now and maybe you're the biggest kid or not the smartest kid or what have you. And I really think, hearing that will, shed some light on the men across America and throughout the different countries as well.
And before we get into that, I like what you said, you know, about you never know what somebody's going through in today's society, no matter who you deal with, whether it's the person in the checkout line, someone in the gym. Kindness is free. Like it's free. It's the ultimate free thing that we can give to everybody. And I'm not saying you have to be a pushover or be weak, but like you said, give people some grace. You don't know what someone's going through. They could have lost their job, their house, their marriage. Someone could have died. Buddy's kind of in their own little bubble, running around trying to figure life out. The difference between someone like having a bad day or a good day, or maybe even potentially staying alive, is just be kind. Hold doors open for people. Say please, say thank you. The things that we get away from, that we take from granted, it's very important to be the bigger person, so to speak, as far as a man, and be kind. And as far as, my transformation, so to speak, you have to understand that no matter what we're going through, whether it's trauma, mental health issues, a good life, a bad life, whatever, there's a famous quote, and I don't know who said this, so forgive me for that, but it says, to be the change, to see the change, you have to be the change. We literally have 150 billion% control over our life. So you have two choices, right? You can choose to be stuck and miserable and angry and sad and weak, or you can choose to be strong and resilient and a leader and a guidepost for people who may be lost. And that's just it was fight or flight for me at that moment. I had guys threaten to throw me overboard and want to fight me all the time. I never ever expected when I went into the military to face this kind of adversity. I just had to make a choice, and that choice was I went to GNC. I didn't know anything at the time about like supplements or working out. I let the guys tell me everything in the store, essentially, and I started buying magazines on working out. And you probably could go back in time if possible, and I'd have my own montage, right, like Rocky or Commando, the action movies, where I'm working out and I'm taking my supplements and I'm eating healthy, and I just had to start fighting back and start to earn that respect as a man and say, look, I'm not a pushover. And that kind of was what instilled into me everything to, like I said, be a cop, how I run my life as a man and as a father and as a husband to protect those that can't protect themselves and be someone who leads. I always say, especially if you're married as a man, you need to protect, provide, and preside over your wife or your partner, your spouse, because they need that security. And, I feel like in today's society, a lot of men were falling by the wayside and we're afraid of masculinity being toxic, or you can't be tough and be vulnerable at the same time. And you can. I know you can because I do it every day. If I need to cry because my feelings severely got hurt, whether it was by my wife or I saw something on TV, a tragic event that really struck me, or even the wife and I went to the movies to see Zootopia 2. I'm a big kid. Like I'm the biggest kid in the universe. I'll never grow up. I love cartoons and comics and everything. And so the wife and I go see in Zootopia 2, and I forget the scene, but somewhere near the end, like I started crying in a kids movie, and I'm like, because it was just beautiful and it touched me. That's okay. Like, you can do that. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less of a man. So trying to get us as men to go back to what I view as masculinity, that's my goal, man. And that's the transformation has to start within. You have to see the change to be the change.
I love everything you said there because, again, just a society now is just, trying to water down like manhood, if you will. And I love that you said that because, like, I'm a big anime Demon Slayer fan. And, like, the ending of the movie, I won't spoil it for anybody that hadn't seen it, but the ending, like I said, I kind of like, teared up in the movie theater. And then one time I took the kids to watch the new Lilo and Stitch, took the twins, and had a said the similar scenario. I had to, use the napkin to like, dry up because, it's towards the ending. And again, I love that you said that, stuff like that's okay. And I just feel like, as men, we're taught like you're weak if you cry, or you're, sissy, or oh, you're a crybaby, or you're sensitive. And it's, it's okay to have balance. Duality is the key. Something that, I'm still learning is, just as a young 29-year-old man, but I really just want to encourage the listeners and viewers, the men out there that are listening, especially, it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to, share feelings, especially, I love that you said, like, how your wife communicate that, especially in relationships, because I feel like, we're just taught as man is just to shut down, and then we kind of like blow up, or it's kind of like that volcano. I know when I was in counseling in middle school, it was like that. They called it the volcano effect, where you're just like pushing everything in, and then your wife's like, "Hey, I'm gonna cook dinner," or whatever. You spaz out on her. Your
Yep.
girlfriend's like, "Hey, I don't want sushi. I want, barbecue for dinner." And you like get an attitude, and they're like, they think you're crazy. Like, what's this coming from? It's because you don't, talk about your feelings. And so I really just want to encourage the men out there as well, that are in relationships, especially, communicate with your significant other, communicate with your spouse, your partner, wife, etc. Really, and what I've come to realize, it's simple like statements, or like, hey, something that you said. We always there's a term we always call like letting it slide. Again, that grace thing that we talked about earlier, that grace and gratitude word. You're allowed to address things. I just want to break a barrier down for the men real quick. You're allowed to address certain issues and certain circumstances without blowing up. Just because you address it doesn't mean you're being confrontational. A simple, hey, babe, that hurt my feelings, or hey, that conversation we had last night, or that argument we got into, that disagreement, something you said walking away kind of hurt my feelings, and here's why. And really just coming together. And I always say seek perspective, especially with text, or just if you're having like feelings when you're talking, because there's a lot of things said that get misconstrued or misinterpreted. And if you don't seek that understanding from your partner, then you go to bed mad, or you're like, oh, they must really, can't stand me right now. And, that wasn't the intent. And so I always say attack the intent and then find the purpose. So you really, as a man, especially, it's all about that communication and really understanding that, hey, I'm allowed to have feelings too. We always see like the women are the only ones that can cry and, sob, etc. But really, um, what we're saying is, you want to be balanced as a man, and you want to have that. And for me, as a man, I think it's that chemistry with your significant other, that camaraderie and that comfort. You always want a woman to be consoling, and so if you can't confide in your partner, your emotions, then the bigger question is, why are you even with them in the first place if you
Right.
can't if you have to bottle everything up?
Yeah, definitely. If you're with a woman, regardless of who you are as a man, race, culture, whatever, and you are, you know, upset, sad, depressed, and you try to talk to her about it and she makes fun of you or says, like you said, stop being a baby or why you acting this way, don't be with that woman. The greatest thing in my relationship with me and my wife is that like you said, communication. I've been 100% honest with her from the get-go, from my shortcomings with my first marriage to things that I did, things that my ex-wife did. I have 3 kids, so we're bringing, stepkids into the table and the into the relationship with my current wife, and she knows, like, as a man, if you're dealing with something, never ever ever tell your significant other, partner, even best friend, I'm fine if you're not fine, because society's going to dictate that most of us going to be like, okay, you're fine, and we're going to move on. And once again, that volcano effect that you just talked about, you're stuffing that in there, you're freaking holding on to all this hurt, pain, anger. And especially, and you hit on this, but especially with first responders, military, anybody in a high stress career, you come home, you don't turn it off before going inside. That's called emotional regulation. And like you said, the wife or the partner, she's like, "Hey, I made steak for dinner," and you yell at her, not because you're mad at her or you hate her or you want to disrespect her, but you don't know how to control the emotions and the stress and the things that happened, at work that day, or what you saw as a cop, or what you dealt with as a veteran, or whatever. Like I said, a high stress job, you have to emotionally regulate that stuff. You have to stop before you walk through that threshold. And I tell people this all the time, your job does not define you. Your job is something you do to make money, to support your family, but your job is not who you are. When you walk through that door, you're a father, you're a husband, you're a man, you're a brother, whatever. So you have to figure out what works for you to be able to turn that off. So when you go through that door and your wife's like, "Hey, I'm so happy you're home," you can be like, "Hey, I'm happy I'm home and I love you and thank you, for making dinner," and reframe how you're thinking and what you're saying. And you're going to avoid a heck of a lot more arguments than if you just go in the house mad, angry, and pissed off all the time.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I love the way you broke that down because again, you really have to, compartmentalize those feelings and really be able to, articulate your feelings. I think that's a lost art in manhood, especially. And then we kind of look at the women, they're just like, hey, this guy's insane, or this guy's always blowing up, or he's a short fuse. And it's really just because, growing up, you really haven't, learned how to compartmentalize those feelings. And so just, as you're listening and viewing this episode, really take that into thought, really. If you're in a relationship, really kind of understand like, hey, um, am I really, 100% committed emotionally and invested, to my significant other, or am I just, blowing up, or are there any hidden trauma that I need to heal through, and then communicate that with your significant other, and then you can work together. There's counseling, there's coaching, there's different, so many resources nowadays. I think that's one thing society's gotten better at is so many different outliers and different ways to, medicate those nuances and really heal from within to really become the best version of yourself, like you said in your early interlude. And so, with that being said, kind of walk us through, you know, kind of how you got, into the police force. And then I know a lot of people, the different climate of the police force, there's so many different things that has just happened over the past 5 years, I'd say, from COVID and up to now. And so, with that being said, kind of go through your mindset when you first went in as a police officer, and then kind of like what led you to leave and become a fitness coach.
Yeah, so, typically for most veterans in the military, when you get out, you really don't technically have like a plan, and whatever job you did in the military, it's easier to get a career in that because you've already done it for so many years. So it just made sense for me to go from military law enforcement to federal law enforcement. I worked for Department of Defense for 4 years, and then Veterans Affairs Police for 6 years. And it kind of was a culture shock because when I started working for Veterans Affairs Police, I was like, oh, I'm going to be here for the veterans. That's my community. That's my tribe. That's my people. But in reality, what happened is it made me very jaded against veterans because I was arresting the same veterans over and over again. I was dealing with the same veterans over and over again, the same ones that had mental health issues or drug abuse or alcohol abuse or beating their wives and kids, and just horrible people that I had to deal with day in and day out. And when you're dealing with, bad people and then a climate where people are unhappy and they don't want to be at work and they don't want to do their jobs, that's like double dipping in making your life miserable. And I just was so miserable doing that. And I always had this dream of being a gym owner. Essentially, fitness, I feel like it somewhat changed my life. It's very important in my life right now. It's a non negotiable that I keep because when I got out of the military, I got severely depressed. I thought I was going to do my 20 years. I got out in 10 due to injury. And I blew up to almost just over 300 pounds and was just miserable. And not knowing anything about fitness at the time, I literally went to Planet Fitness and I would jump on the treadmill for 30 minutes, the elliptical for 30 minutes, and then the bike for 30 minutes. I just did that over and over again. But I had no knowledge. I didn't know about eating healthy or anything. So that was kind of like the step into my fitness journey. Now, as time grew on, I got better about learning, getting my certifications as a personal trainer and learning how muscles work and nutrition and all that good stuff. And as we get older, science and research has dictated that strength and conditioning is the key to a long lasting life. And being a veteran with lots of injuries, fitness keeps me moving. Fitness allows me to, or exercising allows me to go upstairs, play with my kids, carrying groceries, all the things that if I just gave up training, let's say for 2 months, maybe hell, we'll extend it out 5 months, I probably wouldn't be able to walk. So fitness is very integral in my life. And I've realized that in my three pillars, fitness, mindset, discipline, any man that I'm working with that's stuck, they're missing either one or all three or a combination of those three things that are integral for us being successful and being happy and living the best version of ourselves. And when I'm in the gym, that fitness is not about working out. It's not about trying to grow muscle or lose fat. That's my personal time. Like, I am zoned out. I am locked in on what I'm doing, on the movements of how I'm lifting the weights, listening to the music. And essentially I feel at times like I'm the only one in the gym. I'm on this high that provides me an escape from my reality, so to speak, because I'm not worried about emails or business or kids or wife, of course, unless there's an emergency. And when I do that and I take that time first thing in the morning to get that done, that allows me to lock in with what I need to do for the rest of the day. And I've found that even when I take rest days or I'm sick or for whatever reason, if I miss multiple gym days, my mental health goes in the toilet because I really do need this activity attached for me to be able to feel good about myself and be happy. And get my accomplishments and the things that I have to get done during the day.
I love that. I love that because again, it's really all about, organization, really, and that attention on detail and attention on what you want to accomplish as a person, especially as a man. And, if you're out there single and like you just started your fitness journey, that's really attractive from a woman is really a man that has a purpose, a man that knows how to lead. And so, in order to learn how to lead, you have to build those principles and build those core values from the ground up. It's going to take a while. It's going to be a lot of hard shadow work, and it's going to be gritty. It's going to be grimy. It's going to be nasty, and it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be pretty. But it's all about just starting, taking that first step towards something. And so, I know we're coming in about a month left of the year. And so a lot of us have those New Year's, new me, new resolutions. And I just want to encourage you, start early. If you already know some of the things you want to accomplish in 2026, um, start it now and start laying out the framework. How do you build a house? You start with a blueprint, right? You don't just go to Home Depot and Lowe's and start buying roofing and just throwing wood and stuff together, right? And pouring concrete. You really have to build a foundation, build that blueprint, and see how do you envision the house of your soul looking like. And so, I love that you really broke down, you know, that fitness journey as well.
Yeah, and I always say that New Year's resolutions are BS, right? Because if you wanted to do that thing, if you wanted to lose weight or get that new job or ask that person out, like you said, you ultimately have to take action. All you're doing is you're giving yourself an out. Oh, I'll just wait till next year, or I'll just wait till the next month. And then you essentially set yourself up for failure. Anybody can be super successful if we just live 1%, which isn't anything really, 1% better every day, and you stack those over time, and that's what equals your wins. And I always tell people, as far as fitness, if you need to fitness when I talk about fitness, I talk about the totality of everything, your health, your nutrition, your supplements. Not one thing works. Even for personal development, me as a coach, you have to use a little bit of everything to become the best version of yourself. You can't just do one thing. And I always tell people that need to start a fitness journey, find that activity. Because I like lifting weights doesn't mean you have to lift weights. If you like swimming, if you like biking, if you like running, if you like walking, do that. Do that and do it as long as you can, that it makes you happy and it makes you excited to want to do that, and keep doing it until it works. And then when it doesn't, move on to the next thing. I think a lot of times with anything, especially as men or humans, we get lost in the aspect of actually doing something, right? You say, "Oh, I want to lift weights," but then there's 50 billion social media influencers telling you 5 different ways to do a bench press instead of just figuring out how to do a normal bench press. And so you get frustrated because you're taking in and consuming all this information. Oh, I need to do this diet. I need to lift this way. I need to eat this way. And then you get nothing done. Just take action. Just take action. Take that first step. And then the next day, do it again. And the next day, do it again. And then before you know it, it'll become a healthy habit.
Right, right. I definitely agree with that. And definitely, you always have to start somewhere and really build those habits to really, you know, accomplish what you're looking to accomplish. And so, question on that, for the audience that's out there saying, I really don't know how to start, what would you say to like maybe a new client that you're working with or someone that's really timid and shy that's never really taken a leap of faith like this before when it comes to fitness?
I mean, once again, it's just asking the right questions. It's making sure that, first of all, you have to have, like you said, the blueprint. You have to have a game plan, right? So that's where it starts. What is your ultimate goal? Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to build muscle? Do you want to lose weight, then build muscle? Do you want to build your cardio endurance? So, whatever their goal is first, but then making sure that it's realistic, right? Whenever I've trained a client or I train a client in fitness, if someone says, I want to lose 30 pounds in 10 days, I'm going to tell them, like, look, that's awesome, but it's just not going to happen. We're going to have to start with 5 pounds in 20 days. And once you lose that 5 pounds, you're going to notice a significant difference and you're going to want to continue to lose 10 pounds in, 2 months, or 50 pounds in 6 months. You have to set realistic goals. I think a lot of time with anything, but especially fitness, we want everything right now. We live in this world where literally I can order just about anything, anything on Amazon, and it will be here tomorrow or it'll be here overnight. I don't have to go get my groceries. I can pay someone at Walmart to bring me groceries. I don't have to leave my house because everything's so convenient. But anything worth doing takes time. You can't take a magic pill to lose weight. You can't take I mean, you could do steroids, but you can't take a pill to gain muscle. You have to put in the work and the time and the effort. So, once again, first of all, building that blueprint, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? How long is it going to take you to achieve that? And what are you going to be able to do that's going to keep you going for the long-term long haul that you'll enjoy? That's the keys to success right there.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And I definitely appreciate that, you breaking that down because, I just think that, a lot of people have trouble just starting and sticking to it. And really, it always comes down to, what's your why? I always use the analogy. I've used it before. It's like, don't go to the gym because your five friends go to the gym. Because the one day they're like, hey, we're already fit and we're already ripped. We're going to take 2 months off. Now you're like, I don't want to go now because you're not going. You want to have your why tied to you and not someone else. And really, you want to do it for the right rhyme or reason and not just to just do stuff. And so, with that being said, you really just want to, make sure you're living your own purpose and living the purpose that you're called to be, not just what society or what social media says. And so, with that being said, kind of going through that COVID and kind of going through that divorce and kind of losing yourself there, kind of walk us through like your mindset when that happened. And, a lot of people that are listening and viewing right now, they want to know, how'd you, overcome that and how did you, begin to build yourself up to become the man you are today?
I think a lot of it, and we talked about this a little bit in the show, your support system, right? Like, as a man, we have this tendency to think that we have to do everything alone. And that's further from the truth. We need a band of brothers, we need partners, we need family, we need people that are going to tell us when you're effing up, hey, you're effing up and you need to fix this. And we need to tell people, like, hey, you're on the right track, keep going. And after I lost the gym, already having mental health issues, I didn't do much for 6 to 8 months. I don't remember doing much. I was just miserable, very hard to just get out of bed and do the essentials. And essentially, after that 6 months, I guess, of mourning the failure of my business, or the gym losing the business, my wife actually said, "Well, why don't you go back into law enforcement?" And knowing that I needed to protect and provide for my wife as her husband, I was like, okay. And that wasn't necessarily the right answer. So I went and got state certified here in Florida, and I found a department to work for. Second day on the job, a young man killed himself. I had to deal with that. I had to process the scene, had to take the weapon out of his hand. And I remember between that and, as a man who is at the time 45, 46, and had experience in being a cop, and my field training officer treating me like I was, a 13-year-old, never had any experience, never done anything, getting yelled at, getting talked down to, and the stressors of dealing with the bad guys that I had to deal with and making arrests and taking people to jail and just seeing all this evil because, as a police officer, you typically don't see a lot of good. I remember after the incident with the guy that killed himself, I couldn't take it. I broke down. I came home. I was a nervous wreck. And I told the wife, I was like, look, I know we need support and you need my support, but this is not the answer. And her being so loving and caring and understanding, she's like, you know, you got the job, you did the work, you tried, you did your best. And even though it was 4 months, I understand. So if you need to quit, go ahead and quit. So having her confirmation or go ahead to do that, I was able to go ahead and quit. And so, I'm sitting here and I'm like, crap, I don't have a job now. Bills aren't going to be on pause. As a veteran, we have a lot of wonderful programs. And I do receive disability for my injuries and mental health and all that good stuff. I was able to go to school, and going to school, they actually give you a stipend. They give you like a housing allowance. And that was my income for a while. I'm almost graduated with my degree in communications, which I went that route because of everything I do and talking to people and stuff. N- The common denominator with the coaching or being a coach, I run into my former gym members all the time out in town. And the first thing they'd always used to say to me is, "Hey, when are you going to open another gym?" And what I honestly want to say is, "Well, when you give me $60,000, I'll do it tomorrow." The second thing, they just solidified, and I took that sign, right? And sometimes we have to pay attention to what God, the universe is telling us. They'd always say, "Well, you were a good coach. No one ever trained us the way you did. No one ever talked to us the way you did. No one was ever there for us the way you were." And that's the main reason why they want me to reopen a gym, because they never found a coach like me or a program or how I did things. And I was just like, well, wait a minute. Like, once again, I'm a man. I want men to be strong again. I want men to be good parents, good fathers, good husbands. And if I can help somebody do that through my three pillars, I can coach literally anywhere in the world. I don't need a brick and mortar business. I don't need a gym per se to reach people. And I want to reach people not just on the physical level, but on the mental, emotional, and spiritual level, because we have to attack those issues we're going through with everything. Once again, we can't just do one thing, and really just try to get men, because we get in this rut, right? We get stuck. We get married, we have kids, we work that job for 10, 15 years, and we get in this rut where everything just starts to fall apart. We stop dating our wives, we stop being there for our kids, we don't take care of our bodies. And then somewhere along the line, you have a health issue or you lose your job or something bad happens, and you start to think about, dang, where did that time go? Where did my life go? So if I can get in there when a man can say, "Look, I'm jacked up and I'm messed up and I don't know what's going on, but I need to fix it," and I can help. If I help just one man, if one person listens to this podcast, they get some sort of counseling or medication or help they need for their mental health, because I can say, "Look, I did it," then I've done my job. And it's just that service mindset of wanting to give the best version of myself. So when I'm dead and gone off this earth, my kids can say, "Damn, my dad gave it his all. He really busted his ass to make this world a better place." And it just starts with that desire to want to help and see something different, and kind of, I'll show my age, but attribute this to, like, unpulling ourselves out of the matrix, unplugging ourselves, right? Once you unplug from society and you become your own version, and you know that, like, I got one life, I have one shot, one day is not guaranteed to the next. I need to be the best version of myself. Then you can start working on that, and you won't worry about, like you said, your friends going to the gym. You have to do it for yourself. You have to find a way for yourself, because that's the only way.
I love everything you said there. And, I hope you guys are really enjoying this and really understanding, that you can do it, whatever you put your mind to, and um, really just have that passion, have that why, that fire, and the desire inside to do something for you and to be the best version of yourself. Again, we're really trying to rebuild the manhood and really, show men that they can be strong, productive members of society. And so, with that being said, what would you say is your greatest success story with someone you work with?
I mean, my greatest success story, honestly, is with myself, because if it wasn't for me working on myself, I wouldn't be able to help anybody else. And one thing that my wife always used to say to me, she said, "I love you, but I love myself more." And that's so true. You have to love yourself first. You have to get out of that sense of hopelessness, worthlessness, and you have to decide that your life means something and you're worth something. And I'd like to say to everybody listening to this, my mental health issues didn't go away. Okay. They're never going to go away. I don't think some of my trauma is ever going to go away. But practicing gratitude, journaling, having honest conversations when I'm upset. If I'm having a bad day or a mental break, telling my wife, "Look, my depression's hitting me hard today." I take medication for my depression and mood. I see a counselor. Once again, I go to the gym. I use everything at my disposal to heal. And that's what we have to do to be your greatest success story. You have to understand that you can't let the trauma, the depression, the anger, the divorce, the whatever you're feeling, the rejection, you can't let that define you, because if you let that define you, you're going to have a miserable life. And I'm living proof of that because I was the guy that was always negative. I was the guy that if you cut me off, I'm going to cuss you out. I'm going to honk my horn. I'm going to road rage. If you're a waitress and you mess up my order, I'm going to throw a temper tantrum. If I didn't get my way, like I call it adult temper tantrums, I would yell, scream, be angry. That's not a way to live, not only for your health, heart disease, stress management, cortisol, all that stuff, but you're going to be miserable and you're going to be an a-hole and the people aren't going to want to be around you. And then you're just going to keep digging that hole that you're burying yourself in, and you're going to be lonely and angry for the rest of your life. And I didn't want that anymore. Like, I didn't want that dark cloud over my head. And once again, I had to make that decision that, hey, I need to jump into my trauma head first and realize that once I slay that dragon, once I get into that darkness, it's funny because it's honestly not that bad. When you're dealing with stress or trauma and once you just attack it head on, it's done. It's over with. And somebody, I don't know if I heard this somewhere or somebody said it to me. I think someone said it to me. Everything that happened up to today, it's in the past. So why am I going to hold on to that? Why am I going to dwell on that? Why am I going to think about that? Every day that I wake up, that I have breath in my lungs, that's a new day. That's a new opportunity. And no matter where you're at in life, you can start fresh from that new day. They say all the time, it's day one or day none. You have to decide, I love myself. I'm not going to live this way. I'm going to become the best version of myself. And then you have to start getting to work and start implementing all those things that we've spoken about to start to turn your life around.
Awesome, awesome. Very well said, very well said. And, I just want to piggyback real quick and really just say, again, appreciate you coming on, the Create Dominion podcast to really shed light to the men and the viewers and listeners around the world on this wonderful podcast. I really want to encourage everyone to really take something, again, like I said at the beginning, so many great nuggets shared here today, but really I want you to apply it. Application is key. You can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink, right? You've always heard, work without faith is, faith without works is dead faith, right? So you want to make sure that you're actually putting in the work and applying what's being said here today. And, really just want to, tell the audience, especially the men out there, that you matter and that you can, do what you put your mind to. And so, with that being said, any last minutes advice or encouragement that you would have for the men out there and for the audience, and then also tell the Decree Dominion podcast lovers, where they could find you and your coaching program as well.
Definitely. So my tagline or mantra is turning pain into progress, right? And when I say pain, I don't mean necessarily like physical pain. It could be physical pain, emotional pain. It could be just the pain of whatever it is you're struggling with. And if you want to be the best version that you can be, whether you're man, woman, whatever, you have to decide that I'm going to face this pain, and enough is enough. And I'm going to be determined to get through this no matter what, so I can see the light on the other side and get out of this darkness. Because at the end of the day, we only have one life. We only have so much time on this earth. The things that I'm learning and the things that I'm doing, I wish I knew this when I was 21, 22, 23. But now that I know this and, I'm 48, the last half of my life is going to be an amazing, beautiful thing. And I'd rather the tail end of my life be great than the first half of my life because, essentially I know that by the time I take my last breath, I really did my best. I really tried to help as many people. I really tried to impact as many lives. I tried to be the best husband, best father. And men, if you want to change, you have to get out of this standard of because my father or because my mother or because my grandfather, whoever raised you, acted wrong and acted a certain way. You can't let that be the crutch that keeps you where you're at. When I had my kids, I had to break generational curses and say, okay, well, I'm going to tell my kids I love them. And my oldest daughter is 26, my middle son is 24, and my youngest is 13. And every time I talk to them, I love you. If my daughter calls me and she says, Dad, I have a question, and she says, it's a stupid question, it's not a stupid question. You called me for a reason. I'm your father. I'm here to help you. So you have to break those generational curses and go the opposite direction. And once you start to do that, not only can you help your family and help the people around you, but you can start healing yourself.
Awesome, awesome. Again, very well said, very well said. And again, make sure you guys go ahead and follow Coach Rob and really look into his coaching program and make sure you give him a like, subscribe on all those social media platforms. Again, they'll be also available in the description when you're listening to the episode upon full release. Again, it's been a pleasure having you, Coach Rob, on the Creative Minion podcast out of Coconut Creek, Florida. As always, decree and spread the light that shines and go into the darkness inside to reveal the true light that shines. I hope everyone has a wonderful, wonderful holiday, Christmas season, and look forward to having a strong 2026. This has been your host, Dominion, and Coach Rob from Coconut Creek, Florida. And I'll see you next time on the Creative Dominion podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this journey into the depths of Darklaw Dominion. Remember, it's in the darkest parts of ourselves that we often find the greatest strength. Facing the darkness is not a sign of weakness, it's the path to healing, growth, and reclaiming control of your life. If this series resonates with you, or if you're looking for more empowering stories on healing and reclaiming your power, make sure to follow Decree of Dominion on Facebook, Spotify, and YouTube. There, we continue the conversation on mental health, domestic violence, and relationships, offering hope and support. Until next time, keep exploring the shadows, keep seeking your truth, and keep fighting for your light.